different stories from two very different journalists working in very different ways. But before I introduce them, I'm just going to give a very important message that on the ladies' room there was found a smartphone, Huawei, if somebody is lacking their smartphone. Exactly, Jan Gunnar has the smartphone. Okay, so today we're going to meet Sean O'Driscoll. He's a journalist from Ireland. He's been working in the UAE, the Emirates, been based partly in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, been working on the workers, the slave workers in the Gulf. And then it's Tobori Ovori. She has been working on trafficking. So because your stories are different, we'll first hear from Sean. So we spend the first half hour or so with Sean and then with Tobora. I think it's going to work best that way, that we concentrate on the two very different ways of working. So Sean Driscoll has been working for 4 years in the Arab Emirates, and he's been doing news stories about the foreign workers there. You are also a human rights lawyer, yes, yeah, a trained lawyer, and been publishing your work in the New York Times and The Guardian, and you're now working with a documentary for BBC. It's going to be shown on BBC World and BBC Arabic. And you want to open your session with a small presentation, and then we'll talk a bit after your presentation.
Okay. Will I stand up or sit down?
As you please.
Okay. Well, I suppose I just wanted to maybe give some pointers here on how to investigate this issue, because I know you're all very accomplished, but maybe there's just some talking points here on ways into this subject, because it can be very complex if you let it be, but if you find a simplicity in it, then it can actually be quite easy to investigate slavery and human trafficking and so on. So I just want to do a few pointers here. This is just, I've made as many mistakes as successes in this area, so I want to cut out time for a lot of you just by learning from my mistakes as much as successes. This is really important for, I know a lot of people are interested in the Qatar World Cup, and obviously in the UAE we have the Guggenheim Museum, the Louvre Museum, all these international projects, and for the international media, they're really only interested in this. If you call up and you're kind of, you want to connect your subject to a bridge building project in the UAE or strawberry pickers in Mexico, the media value goes up 1,000 times if you can find the international connection to these projects. In my case, that's why I focused on the Louvre, the Guggenheim, New York University, these kind of projects, because immediately you have international attention. These were, the projects that I was really investigating the most, including Burj Khalifa, which is the world's tallest building, where there was a huge problem with the Chinese workers. Single biggest problem is finding the workers, because you can't go on to construction sites and find them, or in the case of strawberry pickers in America or so on, you're immediately going to attract attention. So the only way to do that for me was to just follow the buses. When I was investigating New York University for the New York Times, I would for 3 months, I would just sit there in a car at the car park and just follow buses going out of there back when they were finished their shift, and started to build up this kind of database of all the different companies that were on there and the various problems with the workers. And it just amazed me the number of journalists who would come to the UAE who were very accomplished, but they felt that they could go to the companies or they could go to the government and find out about these issues. You'll find out absolutely nothing from the government, except they're just going to put a surveillance car on you and follow you, So you have to start with the workers and stay with the workers. And the only way to do that is just, the old-fashioned way, just follow those buses out of there and write down the registration number of the bus, because, you have many different buses going at once. Just to give an illustration of the complexity you have, in just one company I started to investigate here, you find Emirati companies who are working for a Filipino company, which is working for a UK company, which is working for an Emirati UK company, which is working for a US company. So, I would find foreign journalists who come in and they're trying to find some way through this, but again, you have to go straight to the labor camps, find out where those workers are, and it's the only way through this complexity. This is a big one that I wish I'd learned from the beginning. Some of these institutions like New York University, they had kind of a human rights compliance system that looked on paper, looked fantastic. And I didn't investigate them in the beginning because I thought that they had a really good system in place. And you're going to find that for the World Cup in Qatar too. You know, you have all these kind of very great human rights compliance systems, but when you look underneath the surface, it's just not the case, because you can't undo, 50 years of complete exploitation of workers just on paper, So that was a big fault on my part, that I trusted the paper in the beginning, and then the more I dug, the more I realized that the paper is meaningless. In fact, this is called Labour Camp number 42 in Dubai. This was the workers were building New York University, their largest subcontractor. And I followed the bus back to Dubai, and the workers told me about they went on strike, and the police came in and they beat all the workers and tasered them, and took a lot of them to jail and deported 300 of them. And meanwhile, NYU is reporting, these human rights reports saying that everything is fine and all the workers are happy. So, this was a big lesson for me, like just never ever trust the official version. This is what got me in trouble with The Guardian. They blurred out my face, but it was obvious there's some tall Irish guy asking questions, and they didn't protect me enough. And recently I had a problem with, or a discussion with HBO Vice with the same thing. I wasn't going to let the same thing happen to the workers. You've got to remember that they're sitting there with a cappuccino in New York or London. It doesn't hit home to them how careful they have to be, and you have to check and recheck with them, because they don't have the same interest in protecting the workers that you do. This was me in the Guardian video. Like, I'm blacked out and my voice is distorted, but it's pretty obvious to the authorities that was me, because as soon as this was broadcast, then I had a surveillance car on me, and that was the beginning of all my troubles. I think on this issue, wherever you find slavery or modern exploitation, you're going to find oppressive governments trying to find out who's doing this. So you have to let go of your own ego and just keep mixing up your bylines. And these are just some of the bylines I used for different newspapers to try and confuse the government. This is a surveillance car that was following me all the time. And it got so ridiculous, I would just get out in the morning, and then I would see him, and I would just tell him to follow me, and we would just go off for the day. And it's kind of intimate in a way. This is us at a petrol station, and at that point I was trying to get some mechanics to get the tracking device off my car. So the police were following me as I was trying to get their tracking device off my car. But what I discovered actually was that they don't put a tracking device on your car. And this is for God. I don't apply this to the UE. I apply it everywhere. The days of putting a tracking device on your car are gone. It's all on the phone now, and they've got amazing software that all they have to do is just put in your phone number, and they'll just follow your phone everywhere you go. I wish I'd known that. That was a big mistake on my part, that I didn't know that. And it took me a while of trial and error to figure out that they were following my phone and not my car. Even still, just change your car frequently. I had a rental car, and I always made sure it was white, because all the cars are white in the Gulf, so it just confused the police a little bit more. Again, this is one of my biggest mistakes, I think, not to get an unregistered SIM card, which you can buy on the black market in many countries, in Africa, in the Middle East, and so on. And it really helps to just keep the police off your back while you're investigating these issues. This area was a market in Abu Dhabi I call the Inferno, like Dante's Inferno, because it was like layers of vice. In the beginning it was vegetables, and then you go further into the market and it's like slaughtering chickens and meat. And then it was gambling, roulette tables and so on. And then it was pornography in every South Asian language. And then behind that was SIM cards, which is obviously like the most vice you can have. But they were unregistered, so the government couldn't trace them. And the workers offered me one, and I didn't take it. And I really, regret not doing that. This is me just, trying to stay nice to the authorities, even while they were chasing me around. Just keep them happy. This one, I wish somebody had taught me about, was just to stay in with human rights groups, because their media contacts are absolutely fantastic, and to expand the story into the New York Times and the Guardian and so on, that all came through human rights groups. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and if you want to cover this issue, try and keep in with these groups. And whether you're like in Africa or America or the Gulf, they have connections absolutely everywhere. But just be very, very careful of activist groups. That's going to get you a lot of trouble with the government, and that was a mistake I made too, that I showed these groups around, and it just immediately got me into much, much deeper trouble, and got very little thanks for it. This is a really important one. Journalists tend to come in and then they try to find a professional translator, but professional translators know absolutely nothing about this subject. In every labour camp you'll find somebody with perfect English who's a migrant, who's escaping, who, in my case, he was a United Nations worker. Very, very smart guy, knew the whole system inside out. This is him in Vice magazine. They covered up his face, but he's left the country now. This is him in reality, Kabir. This was us investigating Camp 42. Just common sense stuff. Just, don't pay for a year's rent in advance. Thank God I didn't. I was arrested at the airport and deported just before I could put down a year's rent, which is what is expected in Dubai. A Dutch journalist told me this one: use Hushmail instead of Gmail. Repressive governments have ways into Gmail and Yahoo now so easily that Hushmail is absolutely excellent. It's free. It's really useful. Quick Voice, absolutely brilliant service on the phone. When I was arrested, you just press a button on your phone. Police don't suspect it, and I managed to tape the entire interrogation with the police, where they tried to turn me into a spy to spy on other foreign journalists who are coming into the country, which led to this Newsweek article. This wouldn't have been published in Newsweek, only that they had the verification from my phone from Quick Voice that the police had tried to convert me to a spy. Otherwise, I would have sounded like some conspiracy nut. But it was all there on the phone, so these kind of technologies are great. Maybe I'll end on this one. This is really, really important for getting into this issue, or many, many issues. I think it's underused by investigative journalists. Google Scholar is incredible because academics have much, much better insight or access to documents that we never have as journalists. And to track slavery and human trafficking, there was many, many academics who were able to get in and find ways into the story that I wasn't able to. I'll just give you an example. This was a doctor who was looking at injuries to camel jockeys. These are little children that were trafficked, in many cases kidnapped from Bangladesh and Pakistan, and who were put on the back of camels for camel racing, which is very popular in the Gulf. You can see there the ages of the children here. 5 years of age, and the injuries that they sustained from camel racing. A lot of times they were bought from families or simply kidnapped by brokers and brought to the Gulf. The practice is banned now, but we were never able to get into it as journalists. Absolutely no way would the government cooperate on anything like that. But Google Scholar and these kind of academic searches, you can find amazing information. You can see like children 5 years of age, 5, 6, 8 years of age, and just the terrible injuries that they sustained that, to me, it illustrated. This is the worst slavery I've ever come across in my life. This was, this is kidnapping for slavery. It was horrendous. And thank God it's finished now. But I thought that this was a terrific device to use, Again, it's just finding the simplicity and the complexity of these issues, just find that one person, and it just makes it so much easier. And just, expect to be asked for money or help, and just be prepared for that and explain why you can't do that and how that compromises the story. And in my case, you make it, this happens a lot in the Gulf. Police will try and bribe you and coerce you and bring you into their system. And just got to be prepared for that it mightn't be deportation. They might offer you money, and you've got to remember that. That's it. Okay.
It's a flair of working like James Bond undercover, changing SIM cards, changing cars, but what actually happened also is that the police actually asked you to be a spy, to spy on other journalists.
Yes.
Can you say a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, pull this up. That is that's one I really want to warn everybody in the room about. That you've got to be very, very careful when you're investigating these issues. That there is a tendency among journalists to call other journalists in the country, but you mightn't be aware of what their involvement is. I got an illustration of that myself. After we did a front-page story in the New York Times, an investigation into the workers in NYU, and then the police brought me in, and they put a lot of money on the table, and they offered me immunity from prosecution, not just for the story, but for drink driving offences, or if I punched somebody in a pub, they would make that go away, and they would even get me more vacation time or holiday time from my employers. They would just call them up if I wanted that. But in an exchange, I was to write monthly reports on any journalists who were coming in investigating the UEE, and I would immediately, report back to the police what they were doing in the country, what they were investigating, and so on. It was a bloody good deal, by the way.
Did you ever consider...
This is a cautionary example. This isn't an opportunity. I just want to say that.
But you didn't consider...
No. It was a quite sophisticated operation. They clearly had done this before, because they said, we want you to keep up your front on the international scene by writing, but they said that occasionally we'll let you write negative stories about the UEE as well. And the expression was, we'll take the hit on that. So they were very smart in that they wanted me to write positive stories about the UEE, but they knew that my credibility, my front would be blown unless I wrote negative stories as well. So they would kind of engineer these negative stories for me. That would be damaging, but not too damaging. So.
You also said that you have to put your ego aside and use different bylines, like we saw an example of.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get many prizes if you, you never use your own byline, but this is the way to report.
Yeah, it was the only way to really, for The Guardian I used Glen Carrick, which is the name of my parents' house. And then for The Independent I used Tom South, kind of a reference to an Irish rebel from songs called Sean South. And I always kind of maybe left a little trace of myself in the names. But unfortunately for the New York Times, they wouldn't let me use a fake name. And this went on for more than a month. I would say, can I say John instead of Sean? It's on my passport. No, you can't. And they said that this would be a deception to their readers. But they were prepared to put their own reporter's name on the story, which I felt was more of a deception because, I was doing all the work. It was a terrible decision to have to make, and I only made it on the last minute, and then I realized I'd made a big mistake, and I tried to call the New York Times, and then I fell asleep in my hotel room and woke up the next morning, and then the police were calling, so it was too late. Yeah.
But these workers have horrible conditions, and it's very important that we talk about this because the Qatar Football Cup is coming up 2022, so a lot more journalists should do investigative journalism on the topic. But did you feel that the workers themselves wanted to talk with you, or were they scared that they would lose their work opportunities? It
really depended on, I feel in the smaller labour camps, you find this in Qatar, if any of you are interested in going, it's the same as the UEE in that you have massive big labour camps, and then you also have very small tenement buildings in the city centre. Those are far, far easier. You have total access into maybe the overcrowded apartment buildings where the workers live. The ones who live on the bigger labour camps, there's security there. It's a little tougher. The toughest of all, by a long way, was the workers for BK Gulf, which is the largest construction company in Britain. Those are the ones that were beaten by the police when they striked at NYU. They were absolutely terrified. It took a long time to really kind of get into the story, and the way into that really was to stand there at the construction buses and say, guys, I'm not going to talk to anybody here, but I want to know the names of the guys who were deported to Bangladesh and Pakistan. And once I said that, then everything changed, because then they understood that I wasn't out to get them, but they knew that those guys were free to talk, And then, I just stood there one day, I got 60 numbers, just stood there and just number. And then myself and Kabir, the translator, we went back to Abu Dhabi from 6 a.m. the next morning until 10 o'clock at night. We were just calling Bangladesh non-stop until we found as many of those workers as we could,
I did one story about the workers in Dubai, and I remember we went very quickly in and very quickly out, and very difficult to work there. But, you know, I am smaller and darker, but I am a woman, so I was alone with, I think, 2,000 men in the camp. But you are tall and whiter and Irish and really stand out. So once you come into a labor camp, everybody must know that you, I mean, obviously not of them, not one of them.
Oh, that's a huge problem too, yeah. Especially in South Asian culture, you know, there's just such a culture of finding out, like everybody just stares and comes to see what's going on. And this was a huge problem at Abu Dhabi airport when I was trying to interview the workers who were being deported from the Louvre project, the French art museum they were building in Abu Dhabi. But I managed to get one of the deported workers to come over and talk to me on camera for The Guardian. But of course, all the South Asian workers come over to see what's going on. And, you know, you have to be very careful of that. The only way to do it, I think, is to try to talk to one worker, get his number, and then see if you can meet him later. You know, there's always, around the labour camps, you'll always find little coffee shops and stuff like that. And that's definitely the best way to do it.
Last question before we move over to the next topic. You know, what is appalling is that the Louvre, New York University, and of course the FIFA World Cup are a part of this exploitation. But when you posted your stories, did you get any reactions, any feeling of guilt and shame from these international companies? I mean, did the journalism work?
The journalism worked I don't know if it was a sense of guilt, but in terms of accomplishment, definitely the New York University one is the highlight of my career in terms of getting a result, because there was for the first time ever in the Gulf, government agreed to pay for an independent investigation, which led to the independent investigators from America backed up the claims in the article. So now there's a compensation system put in place, which will be at least $1 million, but it'll probably be several $1 million for the workers at NYU, which will really transform lives in Bangladesh and Pakistan. I called some of the workers in Bangladesh to tell them what had happened, and you know, one of them was crying on the phone, and I can't even describe the feeling. Like, you know, after all the frustration and chasing the buses and all the madness, to feel that it will change his life and his family's life, absolutely the highlight of my journalism career. And you know, I'm just so grateful that it all happened, you know.
But the awful thing is also that a lot of the workers, they come back and they come back and they come back, because where they are coming from, it's even worse.
Yeah. This is an argument that's often used in the UAE, the government. Oh, well, you know, they come from Bangladesh and Pakistan, and you know, which I respond, Abu Dhabi is the richest city in the world. I mean, do you really? Is that the conditions you're comparing yourself to? Bangladesh, like, you know, which is 3 million people died in a civil war. You know, like, is that the comparison you want to make? You know, and then they start to see a different way, I think. You know?
We'll move from the workers in the Gulf to Nigeria and to Tobore. You try to find out what goes on when young Nigerians are being exploited by human traffickers. And I really would recommend everybody to read Tobore's story. From the Premium Times in Nigeria, Investigation Inside Nigeria's Ruthless Human Trafficking Mafia. You tried to find out from the inside what was going on, and you went out on a very dangerous journey. And the reason why you did it is because you had a friend that was a victim of trafficking. She came back with AIDS and she died.
Yes.
So what did you want to find out?
When we embarked on the investigation, while we were doing the risk analysis, the intention was not for me to get trafficked to Italy itself. The intention was to get embedded, find out the processes. We just wanted to know, have a feel, what is really going on. The young ladies and the young men, were they being forced or they were going willingly on their own? We wanted to have the inside details, That was the major reason for doing the story.
So you knew that they were being trafficked to be prostitutes, and you knew that was part of the journey that the others were going out on.
In the course of the investigation, we discovered that, okay, for instance, the group I traveled with, the young ladies and the young men, they were the ones who went seeking the trolleys. I wouldn't call them the traffickers. The trolleys. Trolleys are agents to the traffickers, those who do the recruiting. They went seeking the trolleys themselves, meaning they went willingly. Unfortunately, I don't think they really had the idea what they would expect over there, though they knew they would be prostituting when they get to Italy.
So they knew that there would be maybe luxury prostitutes or some of the girls.
In my own case, it was during the course of the investigation, things were unfolding. I had to go through various tests, that's the various syndicates I met before I finally decided, okay, I would travel with this group. For the various young men and women, until they got into the act itself, they didn't know they would have to strip for their bodies to be assessed, so that the trolleys would decide which group they will belong to. Either they will belong to the luxury group or they would be placed on the streets. It depends on how beautiful you are as a lady. I didn't know this from the beginning of the investigation. It was when I was in the process when I was told, okay, you have to strip, we need to assess you. And I was placed in the group of the very beautiful ones, the luxury group. You
were 10 people in that group, and you were going to, you were labeled as product, and it was like the, the better product and the more lousy product. So it was the products who could be, fashionable prostitutes, and there was the street people.
Yes, the 10 of us were in the luxury group.
And in the course, or, the meetings, you learned how to pickpocket.
Yes, that was another shocking aspect.
If you had been with a man, you knew how to, or you were learning how to take his money and his watch, and yeah. What did you want to disclose? You wanted to find the names behind the trafficking syndicates.
When we set out to do the investigation, we wanted to know the process. We wanted to know the reasons others don't know yet. That's, these young ladies, are they being forced, or they were going willingly on their own? And of course, get to know who are the traffickers or who are the trolleys. Just get to know everything about the process.
And we are going to try to see a part of a film about your investigation. Morten, you ready?
MIAHWRA-videos is a cub reporter for the online investigative newspaper Premium Times in Nigeria.
I didn't stumble into journalism, I chose journalism. At the age of 5, I made up my mind I was going to become a journalist. I grew up with so much injustice around me. Political, economical, social injustice. I wanted to make a difference with the power of the written words.
So when she heard that a school friend had been trafficked to Europe, she felt compelled to act.
Trafficking, especially sex trafficking, is rampant in Nigeria.
According to Nigerian authorities, 6 out of 10 people trafficked to the west are Nigerians. Men and women are smuggled via Morocco across the Mediterranean to become sex workers in Europe. She took her story to her managing editor, Mojid Musikulu, who agreed. How to do it was the challenge.
People have talked about how people are trafficked, but we just wanted to know the process.
And to do that, Tobore would go undercover and approach a trafficking syndicate. The team partnered with another investigative publication, Zam Chronicle, based in Amsterdam. Manager Evelyn Groening was impressed by the gutsy young journalist.
Many countries, especially in Nigeria, undercover is one of the few methods that you can use to actually get a true story out there. Because if you just ask for official papers or ask people for formal explanations of things, you hardly get anywhere.
The team spent weeks planning for every eventuality. In all likelihood, Tobore would be smuggled across the border to neighboring Benin, often the first stop on the trafficking route.
Nobody was actually planning on getting her trafficked to Italy or Egypt or wherever.
After crossing the border, she finds a way to escape. That was what we thought.
But first, Tobore needed to make contact with the traffickers. She spent 4 months pretending to be a prostitute.
I knew I needed to win their trust first. I couldn't just walk up to them, hey, I want to be trafficked. No.
How far did you go?
I was always calling outrageous prices to clients who came my way. I was doing that deliberately just to get them disinterested in me.
Tobore took us to the streets where she'd worked undercover.
So how would they have reacted if they had known you were a journalist
I would have
undercover?
been killed. I would have been killed.
So every day, that's the risk you were taking?
Yeah.
Finally, one night she was invited to attend a party hosted by a member of the trafficking mafia. Here she made it known she was ready to move to the next level.
In the underworld, they call it the next level. That I would like to move to the next level. I don't want to prostitute locally anymore. And they asked me, what route do you want to go? Do you want to go to Spain? Do you want to go to Italy?
Tobore was made to strip and was paraded in front of a drunken crowd. She passed the test and was told she was to be trafficked to Italy, but first to Lagos, the main departure point for those trafficked to Europe. Tobore and 9 others, including 3 boys, were loaded into a taxi bound for Benin. A surprising twist in this tale for me is that, in a sense, human trafficking is an open market. Many of those who participate are actually volunteers, and so the traffickers
You can
are
stop it and
spoiled
we'll
for
continue
choice.
the conversation. Okay. So you were found sort of unfit. You were taken to a voodoo doctor. And what did the voodoo doctor say about you? Because the traffickers wanted to check you with the voodoo doctor.
When we started our journey in Lagos, we were taken to the middle of nowhere, somewhere in nowhere. I'll call it somewhere in nowhere. And there was a voodoo doctor. It turned out that unlike before commencing the journey, I had done my research about the processes of human trafficking, but these other aspects, it turned out that they now they call it checking the stars, the destiny of their products. The products are the girls and the young men they are taking out. Because they had discovered over the years that there are some people, no matter what is done, they just don't meet their targets. They don't get good customers. So the fetish aspect, they believed that some persons are not destined for such.
So the voodoo doctor was going to
check all that.
your energy, your destiny, or,
Yes.
you know, if you were under a curse or something.
Yeah.
And what did he find out?
He tagged me a bad product.
Bad product.
I was going to bring trouble.
To your customers.
Yeah.
Was in your hair?
After doing some incantations, he told the trolley that I shouldn't be taken to Italy because I was a bad product. I was going to cause them so much trouble that I should be taken back to wherever they brought me from. And 3 other persons were equally spotted. As regards my hair, the trolley didn't listen to the voodoo doctor because she had somewhat gotten herself attached to me. Because I recall when I failed during the pickpocket session, she had yelled at me the next day, warning me I shouldn't test her patience, that the only reason she was being patient with me was because I looked so much like one of her daughters. It turned out that she had a daughter who was in college in the UK, that I looked like her daughter. I guess it's one of the reasons she had this special likeness for me. She was fond of me. So rather than letting me go, I recall she was telling the voodoo doctor she had invested so much on me, so she wouldn't let me go. She took me to 3 other voodoo doctors. It was the last one she took me to who shaved my hair. And,
Shaved your hair?
Yes. The voodoo doctor had claimed my power was in my hair. That was a complete lie. I had no power in my hair.
What comes out next, I will read, because it's difficult for you to talk about it. Yeah. You were some unfit products then.
Very unfit.
Very unfit products. What happens next is like a horror movie. We, unlucky 4, are standing aside. Mama C talks with 5 well-dressed, classy, influential-looking visitors. The issue is a package that Mama C has promised them, and she hasn't been able to deliver. The woman points at me, but Mama C refuses, and for explained reasons, Adeswa and Umay, that's 2 of the others, are selected. We all witness screaming and trying to hide in the corners as they are grabbed and beheaded. Beheaded with machetes in front of us. The package that the visitors have come for turns out to be a collection of body parts. The mafia that holds us is into organ traffic too. With all of us trembling and crying, I and the other 3 unsuitable ones are herded into separate rooms. Mama C comes later to take me to yet another room for questioning. Angry beyond measure, she whips me at night, telling me to yield information on the forces protecting me. You are going nowhere, she keeps shouting. I have invested too much in you. You managed to escape on the border between Nigeria and
the Republic of Benin.
Yeah, the Republic of Benin. You managed to escape and to get into touch with another journalist, and you are saved. Yeah. But when you came back, obviously with some horrible experiences, how did your bosses in the newspapers take care of you?
I would say it was the toughest moment for us in Premium Times. Because subsequently I broke down, and I was in the psychiatric ward in a hospital in Abuja. The human resource department shifted their office to the hospital. They were with me throughout. My managing editor, Musekilu Mojid, was always in the hospital. Though he was trying to really encourage me, but I could see so much sorrow in his eyes and fear. It wasn't an easy one for him, having one of his reporters breaking down. I was in the hospital for some weeks, and when I was discharged, I later broke down again. The management, my colleagues, they really helped me. I'm still recovering, but they really helped me to get back on my feet, because a part of my reaction to trauma was I was eating so much and I gained so much weight. I used to be very skinny. All of a sudden, I'd grown so big. It affected my self-esteem. I avoided seeing myself in the mirror. I had weeping spells. And they helped me. They would crack me up, make me laugh. At a time, I was weighing 110 kilograms, and they would tell me, "You are beautiful." I don't think they knew, but the words really helped me, the encouraging words. At a time, they discovered that I'd lost parts of my memory. And I recall my editor, Mojid. He had to reintroduce me. He showed me my office, what used to be my office. This is your office, this is your desk. He had to reintroduce some of my colleagues to me because I had lost timeline of a part of my life. And my immediate boss discovered I was losing touch with writing already, so they're quite busy in the newsroom. But they became so patient with me. I'm so grateful for having such support. And had to teach me all over. I've been on sick leave for the past 2 years, and my salary is still being paid. And every Tuesdays, they would come take me, somebody from the Human Resource Department would come take me to the hospital, would be there all through, would take me back home. After I broke down, the Human Resource Department, somebody was assigned to me, had to teach me about living all over again, would come in the morning to help me have my bath. Premium Times, we are a closely knitted family, and they really helped me. The management, my colleagues, great, wonderful people. They helped me to get back on my feet. They gave me a reason to want to live again, notwithstanding the struggles I was having. For each time I had the temptation of wanting to give up, Mojid's face would flash through my mind, my managing director's face will go through my mind, and I would tell myself, if nothing else, these people, I should live for them. They've been wonderful to me.
You did publish your story, and it's a very, very important story because, like we heard in the film, it's impossible to expose these people without actually going into those situations.
Yes.
It was much worse than you expected. But do you regret it?
No, I don't. I don't regret it whatsoever.
Why?
I recall, for a long while I was offline, I was off my email. Then when I got back online to my email, I got an email from somebody, and the person was thanking me and said she had been trafficked before she got deported Spain, and she was actually looking for every way to go back there. And when she stumbled across the story, she read it, and it dawned on her that trafficking is no longer the way it used to be before. And it gave her a major reason to have a change of mind. Not too long ago, she sent me another email that she has completed She went to a fashion school. And now she has a sewing machine of her own. And she started sewing, though she doesn't have an office space. She's utilizing her elder sister's apartment. She just wrote me to say thank you for saving her life. Though I'm certain that is not the only life that has been affected, but if that is the only life that has been affected, I think I'm satisfied with that. So I don't regret it whatsoever.
I will ask you one more question, and then I will open the floor. If somebody has any questions for Sean or Tabora, you can ask a question in a few minutes if you want to pose some questions. What have you learned from this? I mean, if you would do that again, knowing what you know today, what would you have done different?
If I'm going to do this story again, some of the mistakes I wouldn't make. The first is I wouldn't underrate anybody. Before the investigation, I had a good knowledge of street life. I underrated the people I was traveling with. I felt in Nigeria, the street urchins, we call them area boys. I felt they can't be different from the area boys I know. I didn't know there was more to them. So if I were to do this story again, I wouldn't underrate anybody. I wouldn't be overconfident, one. Two, for such a story as this, the reporter must be very patient. I started the story May 2013 and concluded it November 2013. To be honest, I guessed it would be the first time my editor will be here in Mojid. To be honest, I became impatient at a time. I felt, oh, this is dragging for too long. I just want to conclude this and move to the next project. If I were to do this again, I wouldn't be impatient. And another aspect, if I were to do this story again, that I would really take note of, when I was about leaving for the final phase of the investigation, our spy cameras had stopped working, turned out.
Spy cameras?
Yes, they were not working. Ideally, I should have paused the investigation to get better and new spy cameras. But I didn't. I simply felt that, oh, I could use my phone. Really, I was able to get the phone in there. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the phone out there. If it were a spy camera, I would have been able to get the spy cameras in there, and I would have come out with the spy cameras without being detected. So if I were to do the story again, and it turns out that any of my gadgets is faulty, I would pause the investigation until I get that aspect rectified. So that was a huge mistake I made. Then another aspect a mistake I wouldn't make again, I wouldn't get so emotionally involved.
But how is that
Emotionally
involved?
Yes, in quotes. I wouldn't get so emotionally involved because I recall the first time I was to leave for the final phase of the investigation. My editor and the managing director had said, please, hold on. And I told them, oh, the traffickers the trolleys, have been harassing me with phone calls that let's get this done. I held on then. Then the second time, that's as regards when we discovered the spy cameras were not working. I think I shouldn't have allowed my emotions to take me over. I should have allowed my brain to be in charge, not my emotions.
It's a lot to ask for. I want to hear if anybody has a question.
Could you give me some water?
To Sean or to Bora? We have a question there.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Musiki Lumajid, Tobore's managing editor. Now, you asked a question about the lessons we learned. Of course, maybe Tobore didn't remember to add that our risk analysis was pretty poor, which was one lesson we learned. We never realized that Tobore would be camped for days, while being taken through pickpocketing lessons and all of that. What we saw and what we thought was going to happen was that Tobore would join the team. We were in Abuja, that Tobore would join the team in Lagos, and then they would just try to traffic them across the border, where we had positioned a reporter based in Benin Republic who we thought would help in rescuing Tobore from the gang. We didn't know that aspect of being camped didn't occur to us, and so she could have been killed because we didn't see. Our risk analysis was pretty poor. Maybe instead of doing that internally ourselves, we should have contacted experts to help us assess the risk involved in the investigation. And that was why I was really afraid when this whole thing turned out the way it was and Tobore became a psychiatric case. And I was saying to myself, then what am I going to tell people? The world that we weren't able to properly assess the situation. Now, one other aspect Tobore didn't mention was that at a point she became so bad, her health deteriorated so bad, that we needed to cry out for global support. And the International Women Media Foundation came to our aid, and even the trauma center. And then we had to get Tobore to the United States for treatment for months. So, and then she got back and she's been recovering. But she hasn't gotten back to work yet.
Thank you. We have 2 questions here, and I think that's what we have time for, 2 questions.
Hi, my name is Jan. I work in a Norwegian newspaper.
A bit louder.
Norwegian government is sending trafficking victim in Norway back to Nigeria. These girls says they fear for their lives. They fear that they will be taken back and sent out in this trafficking situation again. Would you mind commenting on their chance, on their situation when the Norwegian government is resending them, sending them back to Nigeria?
I didn't get the question.
No, he's saying that in Norway there are asylum seeker or refugees, Nigerian girls, and they said they don't want to go back to Nigeria because they don't have the rights to stay here or the right papers. So he's asking if you think it's right or wrong to send those girls back to Nigeria. Should they get asylum here on a humanitarian basis?
Personally, if it has been proven beyond all doubt that truly the girls were trafficked, so we're talking about a case of trafficking, I would rather say please grant them the asylum because the syndicates out there, they don't work alone. It's a network. And it also depends on how much information the girls have given the government over here. if they have said so much, they would be in great danger when they get back home. Then besides the danger, the trauma of being trafficked is not where the major issue lies. It is post-trafficking, when the girls get back home, or when they get back home, issues of mental health, they're quite expensive to manage. Like my editor already disclosed, I had to be taken to the US for better treatment. On my own, I wouldn't have been able to afford that. So I would say I'm one lucky lady amongst so many. These young ladies, they are from poor homes. When they get back home, their families wouldn't be able to feed them. How much more taking care of their health? They will come down with PTSD, anxiety, depression, just so many issues to be dealt with. So I think they'll be safer here.
Okay, 2 more questions.
I'm Josetta from Finland. I have some questions for Sean. Did you only work in Abu Dhabi or also in the other Emirates? I'm interested in if the government surveillance is in like similar levels in all the Emirates, or is it worse in Abu Dhabi? And then have you researched if the Bangladeshi government has a role in exporting the workers to these camps, and what are their attitudes to the treatment of
Sorry,
the
which
workers?
government?
Bangladesh.
Oh, Bangladesh, yeah. Well, on the first point, most of the surveillance was actually from National Security Police, which was covering all of the Emirates, and it increased a lot after the Arab Spring. You know, until the Arab Spring happened, there was surveillance, but it wasn't like 24 hours. So sometimes it was with me, you know. I don't think that would have happened before the Arab Spring. So, and then the second layer was the Abu Dhabi police, and I was very fortunate for a long time in that the National Security Police did not share information with the Abu Dhabi police. And in fact, on an audio recording, when I was taken in by the Abu Dhabi police, he warned me not to speak on the phone because the National Security Police are listening to the Abu Dhabi police. And they too are being under surveillance. So he said, you know, don't speak on the phone to me. I benefited from that because had the Abu Dhabi police known that I was under surveillance from the National Security Police, then they would not have been so kind to me and offering me money and holidays and all kinds of things. I would simply have been put in jail, you know. So, so yeah, the surveillance is across all the Emirates, and in some ways I think it's worse in Dubai than it is in Abu Dhabi, you know. On the second point on Bangladesh, it's I would say there's good people within the Bangladesh government trying to do things, but the level of corruption in Bangladesh is absolutely huge. And there's a lot of official complacency about recruitment practices, and some of the recruiters in Bangladesh are absolutely unscrupulous. You know, one of the companies that I was looking at NYU as a company called Al Jazeera, no relation to the media company, if anybody here is from Al Jazeera. And they were just a small Bangladesh outfit. Just to give you an example of what goes on in Bangladesh, the recruiter was living with the workers in their accommodation. And not only did he have their passports like they all have, but he also had their ATM cards. So they couldn't spend anything without asking his permission. And time and time again, they sought assistance from Bangladesh government, various workers, but didn't get any assistance with it, you know. So I think the answer in Bangladesh is some of the regional governments, I think, are better than the national government in dealing in these issues, you know.
The last question goes to you.
Hi, I'm Carl, also from a Norwegian newspaper. My question is to Sean. Obviously, it's a big commitment for any journalist to travel to Abu Dhabi or whatever, and starting following buses. I was wondering if you could give any tips on how to make your research beforehand, before you pick those targets, if you will, to proceed further.
I think the human rights groups are a fantastic way before you go. They can really put you in contact with a lot of great people. I had a constant stream of journalists who were coming in, and beforehand, Human Rights Watch in particular were excellent at hooking us up, and then we would use encrypted email to go back and forth, and I think that made it a lot easier for them. When they got there, then we could just go boom, boom, boom. Like, for example, if you're a Norwegian journalist, obviously you're looking for a Norwegian angle, so maybe I can put you in touch with workers who are working for a Norwegian construction company or something like that. Or, constantly I had journalists who were coming in, let's say, from Britain. I had a journalist who came in from The Independent, so I said, okay, I'm investigating BK Gulf, which is a subsidiary of Britain's largest construction company. Let's go to the camps, interview the workers who were beaten and deported. I mean, that would have taken him a year, but through the human rights groups, they were able to filter and say, okay, Sean knows this issue, or maybe another journalist knows this issue. And that's by far the best way to approach it. Just call Human Rights Watch and say, who do you know? Who do you trust? That's a big one too, because some of the journalists in the Gulf, like, they really are under government control, and they will write a report about you if you pick the wrong one,
Jan Gunnar is the boss here. He tells me when to end.
No,
okay, one more question.
I have a question for Tobori. How was it for you after all the trauma you went through? How was it for you to sit down and write the story? How long did it take? And what was the reaction of the Nigerian society when it was published?
Okay. When I returned from the final phase of the investigation, when I later fell ill, the psychiatrist explained that I was in the maniac phase of depression. In the daytime, I was skipping my medication to be able to write the story because I slept too much. We had a deadline for the story to be submitted. I was trying to be strong. That was another mistake I made on my part. I wasn't telling my editor exactly how I was feeling. So I was skipping my medication to be able to write the story. And within a short while, I was able to produce part 1, part 2, part 3. I simply just wrote everything that happened. And I sent to the team I was working with. Before the final version could be written, my health had started slipping down. When the story was published, yes, there was public outrage. And the agency in charge of human trafficking in Nigeria, it's called NAPTIP. They got in touch with Premium Times. We held a meeting. They wanted to know more. We gave them more details so that they could commence their investigations. And the story became a foundation for other investigations. And it became a subject of reference and discussions amongst investigative reporters. And NAPTIP, I haven't gotten in touch with NAPTIP to find out what has been the result of their investigation because I've been in recovery. I was out of the country for a long while. I've only just returned to Nigeria, and I'm sticking to the doctor's recommendation that I face my recovery strictly and not get distracted. That is the reason I've not gotten in touch with NAPTIP to know what they've been able to uncover. But as a result of the investigation, NAPTIP have been able to spread its tentacles, because we're able to let them know that Italy is not the headquarters of sex trafficking from Nigeria anymore, that you need to beam your flashlight on the UAE, particularly Dubai, Egypt, and Malaysia. And I think either a week or 2 weeks ago, they were able to get some of the trolleys in Dubai. We've been able to give them useful leads, which they are really utilizing.
Very good. Thank you all for coming. I all really recommend that you read Sean's and Tobore's work. You will find it on the internet by Googling. It's very interesting and important. Thank you so much.
Thank you.